welcome to Flory Models Daily Vlog. Here we are on Tuesday the 29th of September 2015, and today is Phil's Q&As. Okay, questions and answers, usual thing, pop them in the forum or onto the main site and I'll get through as many as we can here on Tuesday. Any I don't get through, don't panic, we'll roll them over till next week and make our way through. First of all, working on the RB6, almost together. To be honest, I got a bit of trouble getting this tailplane or the rear spoiler to sit in correctly. For some reason it just doesn't want to go. And I have another confession, which is a horrible one, but I've made a massive cock up. Okay, I don't know how well the camera will pick this up. Let me just drop down the top one so I can show you that I am just like everybody else and it goes wrong. I hope you can see it. Let me get a pointy tool. Okay, you might be able to see down here on this edge, it's all blistering. You probably see it down there. The problem we got, the seat underneath should have gone in a long time ago. In fact, it should have gone in right at the beginning. Me being me, thought, oh, we'll pop it down afterwards, we won't have a problem, and we'll do it just like that. Unfortunately, it doesn't fit. Whilst I was trying to shoehorn it from the underside to come up, obviously I put pressure on both these sides and it split the sides around here just a little bit, and you can see it over here now in the light. What's happened is it's actually lifted the paint off, it peeled it off of the actual plastic down below. Okay, bearing in mind it's had primer and everything. So what I actually had to do is actually glue it back down. So for this, very carefully, we've actually used some Tamiya of their thicker white stuff, which is this one here, and we've run it underneath. Now what I'm hoping is that this will then conform and it will shrink back and it will all go nice and level. So in the meantime, because I'm a little bit worried about it, I've got no way of really getting in here to repaint these areas, okay, unless I very carefully mask off this front area and we go around it like that. But needless to say, it's a bit of a nightmare. It's caused me a massive problem trying to get it in there without shoehorning it, and it is very, very wet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it for a couple of days, hopefully to go off, and it won't give us any more problems like that, and we should come back and it's shrunk down. Then I might just gloss it again just to smooth it out if we can and get rid of any imperfections or anything else like that. But needless to say, it was one of those sort of moments that we all get. Trust me, I get them as much as everybody else, but apart from that, if that hadn't happened, I would have finished it by now, but trying to get that in was a big thing. Somehow I've got to get this to fit down. It doesn't want to sit in there. I've got an idea. It's where the pin coming down isn't seating correctly, and it needs to sort of come back off and then put down there. But generally, it's all fine. It is together. Literally, I've just got to paint the tyres. We've got to put the barge boards on the side, a couple of other little bits of fairing, things like that, and some aerials, and it is done. It's just a case of these little bits I want to get right, taking my time. So there's no point pushing through with it until I've got those correctly done and everything else. So I'm going to leave that really for today because I'm doing this show. I've got to edit it and everything else like that. I can do a bit of editing on this one as well. Probably give it a couple of days, come back to it and move through like that, and in the meantime I'll get on with the F104, which we're working on at the moment. Anyway, on with your questions. So first one up, Paul Stevens asks, my question is for Tuesday is, have you ever thought about doing a one-off blooper gag as you record a lot of the videos? I like to think there'd be some great outtakes. To be honest, we used to. That was the thing. I used to do one each Christmas, was the little blooper gag and everything else. I used to edit out when things went wrong. That was my thing, you know, in the early days. Now I tend to leave them in. So when things go wrong, they go pinging across and all the rest of it. You'll see it on my full video builds because it's part of modeling. It's what we do. I'm not one of these guys that sits with a pristine desk and blue paper behind it and, you know, and everything, and then probably does 2 or 3 takes to get it right. I am literally warts and all here. So when I'm doing a build, it's a case of if it goes wrong, you see it. Like how many times have you seen paint still fall out of my colour cup, go all over the model? That happens to me almost every build, and one day I will invest in some actual covers for my airbrushes so it doesn't happen. I don't get the spillage out the top, but yes, it happens all the time and it happens far too often. But I like to show when things go wrong and those things which technically are a blooper, like when you super glue your hand to your model and all things like that, you know, how you get around it, how to fix it, how to get your skin texture off of paint and all the rest of it. To be honest, you're going to see it on this one because whilst I was putting this thing in, I put a massive fingerprint because so much pressure in the top to get this all to line up. So I talk about actually I come along with a polishing cloth and we polish the lacquer back to get it back. Otherwise we would be left with a big fingerprint in there and all the rest of it. But technically you could take it out, call it a blooper and all the rest of it. But generally, you know how I work. I like to leave them in. Right, okay, what else have we got? Ron says, as you know, I'm about to move out to my man cave, which although is well insulated, it will still get cold in the winter. When I'm not there modelling without the heater on. I'll be moving the stash out there on shelves. I've built under the workbench. Do you know if low temperatures have a detrimental effect on plastic in the kits? I wouldn't have thought so. The only thing I would worry about is obviously damp getting into your decals, because if your damp gets in the decals, that can cause all types of problems. If they come in sealed bags, which most modern decals do, then you wouldn't have to worry about it. The way I look at it, don't forget, it's been on a shipping container coming halfway around the world, got pretty cold then, no one worried about it. And even on long term, I don't think, you know, some of us, we've had model kits in the loft and all things like that, and never had a problem with it either. So I really don't think you'll suffer with any detrimental effects on your plastic. Just your decals, your instructions. It might be worth taking them out, keeping them in a folder, keeping them somewhere in the house, but certainly with the plastic kits and all the bits out there, you'll be absolutely fine, but damp will be a killer on those. Stephen Wainwright asks, hi Phil, Steve, sorry, there's only me on these. If you want to ask them, they've got their sections as well now. Could you tell me the best glue to put down wood deck covering my Tamiya 1350 German battleship? Have a good show, and thanks again, Steve. As I say, probably your naval person is the best one to ask that one. I don't know if Steve's actually done one on his yet, but definitely, you know, from my point of view, because it's wood, I'd probably go down the PVA glue route. The trouble is if you're using a super glue or anything else, gets absorbed into the wood, and then obviously some weight on top of it to pin it all down as that glue goes off. Don't put in gallons of it either, because you can make the wood swell and all the rest of it, but I would do the PVA glue trick. If you wanted to, you could obviously use hot glue as well. That will do a good job on it. So if you've got a hot glue gun, one of the small ones are quite cheap. You can literally put that on, smooth it, get it down quick if you want that sort of instant grip with it. Something else like that, but as I said, I've never worked with this stuff, so it's a bit tricky for me to say. Okay, Shamir says, hi Steve, Sid and Phil, hope all is well. Question, can you guys tell me which colour you use for spraying props on World War II aeroplanes? I use Tamiya XF1 flat black and NATO XF69 and rudder black XF85, but I don't know which colour is best for props. They all seem to look a little bit strange. Do you need to weather them or add some chipping effects for a true effect? Okay, right, hold on, let me see if I can just get mine off without ripping the bottle to bits. Come on, that's it. Now, for me, good job we've got the camera close, but we don't want it quite that close. Okay, there we go. This is mine off of the Typhoon, okay? And as you can see, you've got different textures and everything else. What we've actually got here is a situation of different finishes as well. Down on this is just rubber black. I love that colour. It's a really nice colour. It gives a very nice weathered effect and generally a good starting point with black. Okay, never use black. Okay, there's an old saying which I learned many years ago: never use black, never use white. Always use variants of, i.e. rubber black's got other colours into it. It looks a lot more realistic, because pure black is very rare in the real world, okay, because it fades, it weathers. The same goes with white. Okay, that said, something down here, what you might notice, this was all painted exactly the same color everywhere, all right, but you might think the prop spinner here is different because it is actually a different color. What that actually is just because this has all been dry brushed, so you might catch it in the texture just on these. And what it is designed to do, I'm trying to recreate here, is that thing of speed and wear that can happen. Okay, so you can see it, some of them I think are better than others. We've got them down on the inside as well. Okay, you catch it. Now the way I do that is to literally dry brush it with silver, but when I say dry brushing with silver, a lot of you know, over here somewhere I will have, it's probably the one I used actually, this has got some dark buffables on there. Okay, so then all you do is literally come along and rub this over here. What it'll do is give you a different hue and texture to the the model itself. Okay, so it sort of breaks it up. So when you catch it in different lights, it should look different. So if we can just concentrate on this one here, you see it's very light, and as it moves around, it goes dark. It's just where it's being caught. But also on the nose here, when it's on its side, it should look more sort of worn and grey rather than flat black head on. Okay, but when you look at it head on, it's actually that light spot is actually silver. Okay, and that's what it is. But when you stand back and look at it from here, it should have that sort of look where it's worn, it's scraped and everything else. I know a lot of guys do chipping on props. I'm not a massive fan of that because I think from a scale point of view, it just doesn't work for me, okay? But for something like this on a big one, you can put this in, so these streaks that it has on here just gives it that look like it's been spinning around at sort of near supersonic speeds and all the rest of it, and it's wearing as it's going through. And when it is touching things, it's not taking chunks out, it's wearing it, okay? And to give it that type of effect. So from my way of doing it is literally to come along. Rubber black, I think, is a brilliant colour. It's got that real nice, it's not like a NATO or anything else, it's just got something in it that makes it look very realistic as a normal black in the real world, so to speak, rather than using XF1, which, to be honest, I haven't bought a tub of XF1 in over 2 years now, because I went through the thing of saying, right, okay, I used to love Guns' Tyre Black as well, it's another nice one. But certainly I used to use a lot of NATOs, things like that. Vallejo Model Air was always my one. But this one came along, it's very easy to use. You can spray it neat, you can do it thinned, and it gives you a very nice overall effect. So I would go down that type of route with that. Second question, do you guys think about making your own thinners for your own airbrush and cleaners? I saw on the internet a video of somebody using 99.9% isopropyl, and it was like Tamiya X28, a small amount. Right, okay. Bobby Waldron over at Genesis Models does a great video. I think we had it linked on our forum as well, which talks about his homebrew thinners, which is probably the best one I've seen anybody make on the internet. There's loads of different things out there, and I'm not going to go down the route of slating certain companies who knock out fake stuff or just rebottling other people's and things like that, but certainly there is a lot of choice out there. From my point of view, the one I like is to keep with a particular manufacturer. So I like my Tamiya X20A. Where's my different ones? Where are you all, my children? I don't know what was on my Tamiya. Good, here it is. So I've got this bottle here, which I prefer. It's my bottle of choice, just because it's easy to get out. All right, so in here I've actually got Tamiya X20A. 99% of the time that's the thinner I use. Airbrush thinner as well. This is the Vallejo, basically the Model Air type and all the rest of it. You can thin with everything. Again, a very nice one. And if I'm going to do anything with lacquers, enamels, things like that, then I use the self-leveling thinners. Really like all of those. To be honest, I think it's just by the time you've gone out and bought isopropanol, which isn't that easy to get to because everyone thinks you're a crack addict, because that's obviously what goes into that, and all the rest of it, and you've made it up and you've tried to get it the right sort of, you know, mixtures and concoctions and everything else like that. Sometimes I think it's just easier just to go out and buy the one for the branded one. You know it's going to work, and if you're like me, and I've got Model Air, so I've got the thinner for that, I've got my Tamiya, so, and obviously it's going to thin that, it's going to thin my guns, and for all my metals and everything else like that, metallics, I'll just use a self-leveling thinner. I don't actually need any more, okay? Does it save you money? Obviously, massively. If you're going to be using gallons of this stuff, then yeah, go down the isopropanol route, knock up a batch, have a look at Bobby's one. He did a great tutorial on exactly the what to use, ratios and everything else, and you can do it like that. Personally, I don't go through enough, and I think I probably go through more than most people, but I just tend to use what it is and a bottle of X28 and away you go. But I think if you were using gallons of this stuff, yeah, then yeah, in an expensive way, you could do it cheaper. But for a hobby point of view, honestly, I don't think it's worth it. Okay, what else have we got? Right, Peter Field. Right, what's that coming over the hill? Right, thank you. Right, what else have we got? Malcolm Towers asks, hi Phil, my question for Tuesday is, I have both a retarder and improver by Winsor & Newton. What is your take on using either, using through an airbrush or brush painting? Yes, definitely. Not so much a problem in the UK. Our weather tends to be pretty stable, but from a humidity point of view. But in the summer, I do use a retarder, a flow improver. Now, a flow improver and the retarders and all the rest of it, basically what they are is a form of oil. Okay, now I know everyone's going to be jumping out saying, no, it's not an oil. From a realistic point of view, that's what it is, okay? Because it's got like an oil into it that is designed to work with acrylics and all things like that, it just slows down the drying time. Now, what does this help with? It helps with obviously blockage on your needle, okay? So if you're in a very high temperature country with very low humidity, you can get drying on the needle. Drying on the needle means it's going to spit, it's going to clog, it's going to stop and start and give you all trouble. If you put a couple of drops of flow improver into your colour cup with your paint mix as you would normal, what will happen is it will slow down the drying time. So the time that it spends on the needle drying, it shouldn't impair it anymore. So it should just come out, spray onto your model, and you have no problem. Drying time actually on your model probably won't change too much because you're using a very small quantity. It's not like you've got an artist paints, you know, in a tube and they put it down, they put a dollop of this in to slow it down properly. We're using it more on a sort of micro level because we're airbrushing it, but it should give you enough time to get them out. If you do suffer from basically build up on the needle, I won't say stopping and starting because that can be paint as well, okay, but if you do suffer from drying on the needle, so i.e. you've always got build up on the needle, you're always wiping it off and everything else like that, then certainly you might be in a position where a few drops of this can really help. If you just get stopping and starting and then you wipe the needle, there's nothing on there, the chances are it could be your paint mix is either a little bit too thick and it's struggling coming out of your actual airbrush, or the other thing is obviously it may be just you need to up your air pressure to get it out, i.e. to atomize it off the end of the needle because it can build up and be thick and it doesn't actually want to come out. So it's a little bit of a balancing act. I personally only use this stuff on the hottest days. Day to day I don't need it, but other guys I know are in hot countries, especially in the summer, some areas in the States where it gets very dry, humidity levels very low, then obviously a few drops of this will just keep everything moving on your airbrush. Okay, so what else we got? Jason Green, his first one, welcome. Hello, having recently been buying the Kinetic A6E, I've got this one as we're saying it, yeah. It has a split canopy. What is the best method for gluing the left and right halves together? Now I would run out and get that. I should have prepped this. I have that kit in my stash just over there and I know what you're talking about. The canopy halves, the way they're molded is in two. So you have two and then you have to glue them together. Normally I always recommend the PVA glue trick. Now the thing with the PVA glue is, one, obviously it dries totally clear. Secondly, it's mess free because you can just wipe away all your excess with a damp cotton bud and you're good to go like that. But when you're in this business and you've got two halves coming over, you need something that's going to hold it because PVA glue is not going to give you the strength to actually have a split canopy. So two options. Firstly, you can come along with something like your normal Tamiya, like a white cement. Now this is a resin based one, okay? It's not a full-on weld action glue that's going to fog all your parts. It shouldn't fog up any more than anything else, okay? The other thing as well is just to use Tamiya Extra Thin because we know there's a metal bar system runs through the middle of this said canopy as it comes together, so it's not the clear parts. What you want to do is actually get them together in a type of jig is the best way, so it's together. Use modeling tack or something else like that, or clamps to hold it into the actual area where you want it together. Then run extra thin in that gap and let it weld itself across. The only time you're going to get fogging up and everything else is if the Tamiya Extra Thin touches the clear part it's physically self. So if you do very little amounts of it and build it up over a couple of coats just down on that line as it joins, you should be absolutely fine. What you don't want to use is CA glue or your crazy glue, you know, super glue, because that will fog it up, okay? It will stick to the oils and the grease on your fingers, and then it'll stick to your canopy and all the rest of it. Not so bad a problem because you could polish it up afterwards to clean it off, but obviously you don't want it to be actually biting and a chemical reaction on those clear parts because it will fog it and it won't come up. But my one would to be actually use something like a normal cement that doesn't weld action, okay? That way it's not going to burn into the sides, but you should have enough room. I have seen it, I've seen other canopies, and that's the way I'd do it. Okay, so Lou asks from Stratford. Hey, got one of them in England, but this one is in Connecticut, USA. I was wondering what program you use for your video editing, your videos, vlogs. Also be nice to have a brief video on how I do it. I will do one in a couple of weeks. Actually, I'll take you upstairs. I've got another setup. I've got multiple monitors, and that's how I do my video editing. Now I use Sony Vegas Pro. I spoke about this actually yesterday when I saw this question come up. It jogged my memory on it. It's not cheap. It's $500. It's a very expensive, extremely capable program. Now, I wouldn't recommend anybody else doing it unless you've got multiple monitors. Now, as you know, I've got multiple feeds coming in here. We have 4 cameras recording me when I do all the shows. Well, not so much the shows. Usually I use 2 cameras for the shows, but when I'm doing the video builds, we run with 4 cameras. Editing 4 feeds together by having the timeline and having to drag and put them in takes forever. The great thing with Sony Vegas Pro is on a separate monitor, I have all my feeds. Okay, so you have them 1, 2, 3, 4, and then obviously all I have to do is click a screen with my mouse of what I want to do. So as it's playing, I click on me, I click on a close-up, and then I can see there's a better angle perhaps on a different camera, and I'll click to that one. So it's very much like editing as you would in a studio and all the rest of it. If you're using 1 camera, then you definitely don't need it. If you're using 2, I don't think you need it particularly. But if you're using more than 2 cameras recording, it is a massive help, and it will speed up your editing no end, okay? The other thing as well, it does so many things that I don't do. Okay, but I need to learn it, but it's one of those things, it's a huge program. It's like learning Photoshop and all the rest of it. Once you know it, it's a doddle, but if you don't, it drives you mad. So what I've been doing on Monday, I spent a few hours literally sitting down, watching some videos on YouTube about how to do it, some tutorials, and then playing with different settings and stuff like that. Because there's a few things I'd like to do. I'd like to do a titles thing at the end of it that show what we've used, the music we use, all those questions I get, I can put in titles at the end. I'd like to do a snazzy type of title. Obviously I can do that with Vegas Pro. The other one, there's another one called Movie Studio. If you haven't, I think it's around about $100, maybe 80 quid, and that is a cut down version of Vegas Pro. I'm pretty sure it was Sony Music Studio Platinum or something else like that, but it's the cut down version of Vegas. You can't do multi-monitors, and it doesn't do a few things I like to use, but it does everything else. So day to day, that's the one I'd go for. Okay, but say in a couple of weeks I will take you upstairs when I clean it out, and you can see it's where we keep the stock. The other half of my stash is up there, all my editing, got the computer up there, multiple monitors, and all the rest of it, and I'll show you exactly the basics of what it is, how long it takes, and everything else. Because that's the other thing, for every half-hour video you see I produce on Mondays and Wednesdays now, it probably takes about an hour and a half to edit it. It will then take probably around about an hour to render it, which is putting it into a file. The good thing is now, where it used to take hours to get up to YouTube, it only now takes about 10 minutes and it's up there. So, but it still takes quite a bit of time in the old editing. Okay, Aussie asks, a long time ago we spoke about Vital Bond super glue. Sending it to Croatia, still no luck. Please let me know how things are. To be honest, the supplier we use, Creative, I've been out of stock of it for absolute ages. I'm down to my last bottle. When I get some in, I will sort it out and all the rest of it, but that's all it is. It's literally stockists haven't got it and all the rest of it, but I know it's quite tricky to send around the place and everything else like that. So sorry about that for the moment, Aussie. Steve Stansford, 2 questions. What is the difference between Alclad 2 Aqua Gloss and Aqua Clear Coat? Funny enough, we have both of these. Just move some of this out of the way. Okay, these are the 2 we're talking about. You can see this one's gone a bit funny, the label. Aqua Gloss is basically future. It looks the same, it almost smells the same, but it definitely works the same. So if you've got a bottle of Pledge multi-surface wax with clear, or whatever they call it now, it's a different thing. It's basically the same thing. As I said, you can have that for the same price as that. We've been through this before. Don't be fooled by it. Don't go out and buy old types of thing. It roughly is the same. It's just it's got a milky colour now instead of being clear. This, on the other hand, is a totally different animal. Okay, this, when you smell it, smells like terps. Okay, it works like terps. This is what I like to call a hot product. These are water-based and all the rest of it, they're in acrylic, but this bad boy over here is actually I presume it's enamel, don't know actually, but anyway, where this one is just a irritant, this one is the irritant versus flammable, probably kills everything it touches for because it's harmful. People love this stuff, and to be honest, I've used it on one build and one build alone, and that is when I did my Tomcat. If you look at the Tomcat video, the big one, 30-second one, I used it on there before I did my decaling. Drawback to it is, this stuff, you can touch it within well, 10 minutes and you're good to go. Let it dry, and then if you want to give it a wash over it, things like that, 24 hours, you're good to go. Probably 12, but I always say 24, okay? This stuff took 5 days to dry, to the point where, a little bit like using, as we said, with lacquers and things down here, when you handle it, the heat from your hand softens it, obviously this stuff in this case, and makes it a little bit tacky. So when you take your hand off, you can almost feel it's a little bit tacky. That's why I didn't use it. If you're in a nice warm country and all the rest of it, you have no problem. I did it in winter. It was a little bit damp in the room I was doing it back then, and all the rest of it could be a factor of why that was, but certainly totally different animals. An acrylic, basically treat it like clear, spray it down, use it between your weathering, decaling, things like that, no problem at all. This stuff is exactly the same, but it's the hot product version. It takes a lot longer to dry. Put down thinner coats, okay, let them dry and then build them up that way, rather than going in with heavy coats, because otherwise it takes a while to dry. I think if it had an activator in it, you'd be okay, but on its own, it just takes a bit longer. Both of them work extremely well. I don't use this, as you can tell, because that's the only bottle I've ever bought of it, and I think we did the on test in depth film. That's why I bought it, because I use this, okay, exactly the same. This one here is very nice and all the rest of it, and it is a nice, totally clear, works like a lacquer and all the rest of it, but as I said, really not a product I like to use. I prefer to use other things at the end of the day. Okay, what else have we got? Okay, James asks, have you or any of the team ever visited a kit manufacturer such as Airfix? I'm intrigued to know how they plan to develop and manufacture a kit, or are there any videos around on this nature that if you know? I haven't. I know people who have. I've got 2 friends of ours, actually they're on the site as well, who went over to Hong Kong and they had a look around the Trumpeter factory. They won a prize through, I think it was at Telford actually, at Scale Model World. They entered a competition, first prize, and I think the first 3 got to go to the factory, all expenses paid, and they looked at the development and all the rest of it, and they saw products which are just coming out now, which is weird because this is going back now 10 years, and all the rest of it. Is it 10 years? I don't know, probably going back, yeah, probably about 10 years now since they did that. As I said, very much an insight and everything else from us mere mortals. I think it was in a magazine as well. They wrote articles for it in a magazine. But certainly for our mere mortals, the best one is to have a look at is James May over here from Top Gear, or was Top Gear. They did a thing about building he did a thing called Toy Stories, and it's all about different things. One of them was all about Airfix and building a 1-to-1 scale Airfix kit. Literally, they did. If you haven't seen it, I'll try and find the link, and I'll link it below this video. If not, somebody will put it on the forum for you, and you can see it. And they talk about development. I think at that particular stage when they're filming it, they were working on the Typhoon. I think there was definitely, it was either the Typhoon or Mozzie, and you can see them, the R&D stuff, what goes into it, the kit and all things like that. And then they show the injection molding process in an English factory, which I thought most of them came out of China, but it shows the 1/72 Spitfire being done from start to finish and everything else like that. So we'll have a look and we'll see if we can find that one. Okay, Dennis asks a few questions regarding decals for me. When using older decal sheets, I noticed that the decals don't stick as well to new decals as new decals. I assume this is because aging of the glue. I also have the impression the longer I soak a decal in water, the less they adhere to the model. However, this impression went away when I saw you actually keeping your decals quite wet for a while on the side of your cutting mat. True, definitely. That's how I like to do mine. I'll explain it in a minute. Is there such a thing as using the glue on the back side of the decal, or the glue on the backing paper will dissolve completely when you release it from the decals? On one of my last models, I used red microsol as the softening solution to get it to stick to the model. I'm sure I'm not supposed to use it that way. I know you use X20A on stubborn decals, melting them down into the surface detail, but how do you treat decals that simply will not adhere at all, no matter how much softening solution you apply to the surface of your model? Blah. Right, we've done videos on this. To be honest, there's standalone tutorials and stuff like that. When you see me, the only time you really want to worry, when it's in your water, if the decals floats off, because then you are going to lose its adhesion. there is a very fine glue behind them, and that's what gets them to go on, but mainly it's the thinness of the material that sticks to the surface is what you're trying to do. Okay, when you see them sat down here, all they're doing is, it's a bit like the old technique of taking a piece of material, you can use kitchen towel like a wet palette, and it keeps them wet on there. I just keep water around. They're not actually swimming in it, they're literally just, it's enough to keep the backing paper from drying out as they sit there. So I might put along a large piece down here, and I'll take one off, put it on, take one off. To be honest, I did it with this one and all the rest of it. Older sheets certainly will lose that everything, to be honest. Somebody actually asked, and it probably came off as being a bit curt last time when we did the live show. Somebody said, what do I do with Decals sheets that have gone yellow and all the rest of it? And I think I just simply said bin them and get a replacement, which probably wasn't helpful, but it's true in a way. Personally for me, if the decal sheet looks like they're breaking up and going horrible, I'll buy new, because there's no point fighting with them for the sake of £5–10. If you work so hard on your model, why would you wreck it at the last moment? Okay, so I would pay for replacement decals, and let's face it, you can get every decal as a replacement now. Maybe not the exact markings, but you can get something that's close enough. Or if it's from a markings point of view, you can perhaps use the actual codes from the old sheet and then new everything else, because it'll be better. What tends to happen is the actual the decals break down. Ultraviolet light is a killer on them. It will dissolve them and all the rest of it. But the backing as well, what happens is the decal just welds on. There's a fine film that as it's put down there, I don't think it's actually a glue, I don't know what it is, but that dissolves, and when that dissolves, that's when they don't come off the backing paper and you end up tearing them and cracking them and all the rest of it. So I really wouldn't bother doing it. As for using the old red as a softener, there's nothing wrong with that, but just remember, this will attack the decal. So what can happen is, if you actually put this into the water, for instance, or down first, it might suddenly start shriveling up and gripping. Some decals will react better to this stuff than others. Certainly with the Airfix one we did, this didn't really work with it at all. Come in with some X20A, oh yeah, that's going down, it's welding down, and we're off with no problem at all. But certainly sometimes it's worth testing first, find a little decal, see how it goes down and everything else like that. But if you've got a big sheet and it's yellow and they're not sticking and all the rest of it, then I think it's time to, you know, perhaps think about getting different decals for it. If it's the situation where they're coming off the backing paper and they're physically not sticking to your surface, I wouldn't worry about that too much, because as long as they're whole and they're discoloured and all the rest of it, just roughly get it in the ballpark, get it down to where it's got to be, okay? Roll out the water from underneath it so it's sat there, then come in with a good dose of this over the top. One little tip for you though, if you're using heavy amounts of this, don't let it sit on top of your model and walk away from it. Go along with a cotton bud round the outside of the decal and tap away all of the excess, okay? And absorb it. Otherwise, if it gets stuck into something like clear, it will eat into it and it will turn milky. If you've ever had the situation of milky marks, like water tide marks around your actual decals, that's because the decal has the agent and release agent and everything else mixed in with that good old whatever you're using, setting solution, is eating into your paintwork, and technically it's breaking your paintwork down, and that's what it's doing, and it's staining it and all the rest of it. So if you just pop around and then pop in all around it with a little bit of whatever, a cotton bud or a brush just to take it down, a bit of kitchen roll, just get rid of the excess around the decal, not right on the edges because you need it to wrinkle up and go bad, but that's definitely the way. But definitely from that point of view, that's what I'd end up doing. Okay, what else have we got? Asking about putting down, I've peeled off the clear film. Make sure we're edge, thanks Steve. I think we sort of handled that one, Steve. So we'll just skip over that one. I'm sure one of the naval guys will come back to you a little bit better on that one. Okay, John asks, please discuss the potential issues applying a matte or gloss varnish over vinyl parts such as the tyres and tracks in the Batmobile. They were varnished directly over the tyres. What's the long-term issues with doing this over vinyl? Love to see you do a demonstration decanting paint from a Tamiya rattle can. A lot more modelers mention using this method for paint colours. Otherwise, yeah, I've never seen it done USA. I'll tell you what I will do a little tutorial on that. To be honest, some of the things you need, like old plastic cups, I haven't got, and if I do them in some good ones, I'm going to be murdered by the partner. But what I'll do is we'll do a little tutorial on that one, and I'll show you all about that. As for glossing over vinyl, you're fine as long as it is a good gloss, okay, or a matte. You don't want to be going in there that a matte's going to go yellow. See, it's got to be ultraviolet protected. I can't remember how we did it now, but if you have a good, what is this one? This is the flat, this is acrylic resin. It's what they call UV stabilized, which means it won't go yellow in ultraviolet light. It will over time before everyone's like, oh, it will. I know it will, but it's not going to do it this week, all right? I did it on the vinyl tires on the Batmobile, which to be honest is down in my display cabinet down there. I know it's going to be fine. It's only a thin amount over it. I wasn't like putting it till it's dripping in it and peeling off in layers. A very light coat, you should be absolutely fine, because don't forget, you're adding texture, not painting it, okay? So by just dressing them down, we were trying to weather them down. It's had pigments over it and everything else like that to weather them all in. But as long as you use a good quality flat or a gloss or whatever you want to do for your tires, you should be absolutely fine. These bad boys down here, if you can see them here, had a nasty center seam running right the way through. So what I've done is I've dressed these. So I've sanded the flat part off here, just like this. Done that literally with a very strong, here it is, one of our blue. So it's obviously the coarser side and the fine. So I did the coarse side right the way over this. Then we came in with the fine side to give us this type of effect on here. And as you can see, it takes care of that center seam, no problem. But I've left the walls, and then with the walls, all I've done is oils off my hands is polish them. Okay, so we've just rubbed it around, and you'll get your skin cells, as grim as it sounds, but it works well, all over it. And it will just be enough just to take the edge off and give you a very natural looking rubber tire. Now the outside edge, I haven't done too much, because to be honest, you can probably see it on this one, this is a template for spraying the wording on the tires, which is going to be fun. But that's going to go on there like that, mask up the tyre, and then you airbrush white over the top, and then hopefully we have the tyre markings all done for it. But generally, I don't think you'll have a problem. It should be absolutely fine. But some people prefer to wear them down. You can do the walls as well with a sanding stick, sanding sponge, sanding paper, things like that, just to wear them in rather than do it the way I did. But I think just it's a thin layer. It's not going to peel off. I know what you're thinking. Over time, it'll probably go yellow and peel off, but probably not in my lifetime. Okay, what do we got? Last question for today, over on page 2, just down here. Okay, this is from Brett. Brett asks, my question is about subscription kits. I'm working on the, God, I pronounce these things, D'Agostini, something like that, Millennium Falcon, which will take me until June 2017 to finish it as its part work kit. Looking over your videos, I've never seen you do any types of these builds. Is there a particular reason why? Cost, size, waiting months, years to collect all the parts? I'm just curious. From what I've heard, the idea of the subscription kits in Europe is pretty common, but unheard of in the Americas. Any comments on this? Personally, I'm enjoying the time between part deliveries, as it gives me a lot more time to dig into the details without that nagging need to press on just to finish up. Right, okay, I do have a couple of things to say on these things. One is they're horrendously expensive. You look at these things and you quickly do the maths, and it's like part 1 is 99p, and you think, oh, that's not bad. And then part 2 is $3.99 or something. Yeah, then it gets expensive when you're talking. I don't know how many parts are into this one. Again, I'm a modeler. The one for the Millennium Falcon looks nice, don't get me wrong, and I'm sure it will give you a fantastic model, but you're not going to be painting and weathering it, and that's the bit I like to do, because it all comes pre-done. Now I know a lot of you are going to say, yeah, but you can paint it yourself. Well, you're paying for all of that and all the rest of it. From my point of view, it would drive me mad that I've got to wait till June 2017, and that's basic. It's been going, so it's going to be a year, 2 years, 2017, isn't it? God, that means that's 2 years in the making, that one is. I think it must have started June, or even before June, or it certainly did here in the UK. I don't know how many parts there are, but it's going to work out extremely expensive, and 2 years before you can finish it. That would drive me bonkers. I can't wait that long. Secondly, I don't know if you guys remember, but many years ago, this type of thing died a death here in the UK because one of the companies, which obviously is not this one's obviously very reputable, did the same thing. And if I remember rightly, it was for a train, large scale. I don't know if it's a Flying Scotsman or the Mallard or something else like that, but they went bust halfway through. So all those people who'd spent a fortune collecting all the parts suddenly had nothing. And I know they did their best to try and, you know, bring them out and to find another company, but they did go into administration, and I know a lot of people got stung by that. So again, that was a bit of a thing. These days, I know that can't happen. Before everyone says, oh yeah, but I know they've all been fixed now because they have to complete it. You enter into a contract if you're a subscriber. If you're not a subscriber and you just buy it down your local paper shop each day or each week or fortnight or whatever it is, you're not covered. But if you're a subscription, you've entered into a contract, which means they will complete even if the company goes belly up, I've heard, and all the rest of it. But from my personal point of view, I don't want to wait 2 years or the cost of these things. Over here in the UK, we tend to get them after Christmas. I think that's when the Millennium Falcon one came out last year, and they started the TV commercials and stuff like that. But you can build radio-controlled stuff, radio-controlled planes, helicopters they've done in the past, loads of trains. I think, speaking of Bobby earlier, Bobby Waldron's over on Genesis is doing the ship of some description, a big one as well. Again, that's parts and going through. I think it's the Victory he's doing as well. Again, it's just personal thing. I couldn't wait that long. 2 years? You've got to be kidding. That would drive me mad. Would you want me to do a part every 2 weeks? And here we are. We've got 2 bits which can't go to the next bit until part 28 turns up. Oh, that would drive me absolutely mad. But no, I can understand it because you're going to get at the end of it eventually something that nobody else will have, and I no doubt will be worth a fortune if you never built it as well, because if you had the complete set and you've spent all the money, chances are you put it on eBay, you'll get an absolute fortune for it. And it is a large scale Millennium Falcon. It's bigger than you can get commercially because it's bigger than 1/72, I do believe, and everything else. But if you want to do something like this, have a look at garage kits. It's something I'm going to be covering at Christmas through the Star Wars thing, because I intend to build my studio scale X-Wing, which is my big one. So we're going to do that one, which is a garage kit. There is Millennium Falcons like it, there's TIE Fighters if you're talking Star Wars, but also there's a lot of companies who manufacture the same type of thing these companies are doing, and you can just go and buy them for 500 quid rather than waiting. Okay, alright, you've got to paint and weather it and everything yourself, where you don't with this particular one, but most of the models they've done, they have. I noticed, I must admit, I was watching TV the other day and they're on about the DC3 they're doing as well, where you've got the complete DC3 on a stand and everything else available in multiple parts and all the rest of it, but it's only 1/32 scale, so, you know, again, it's going to be a large lump, but you're not that far off what we can do in modelling anyway. Right, that is about it for this week. I hope you've enjoyed it and everything else like that. Tomorrow, hopefully you're going to get the first part of the F-104 Starfighter up. I'm going to try and nail this thing into submission and get this thing finished off probably later tomorrow. If not, it will definitely be on Thursday before we get on with all the reviews and everything on Friday. So there we go. That's this week's Q&A, so I'll catch you all next week.